So, this is going to be a feedback video for the recently released Dragonflight Hunter Talents. For Mists of Pandaria, Warlords of Draenor, Legion, and Battle for Azeroth, I submitted my feedback either directly or through websites that I used to maintain and no longer do. For that reason, I'm archiving this video instead. Additionally, the nature of these new talents means having WoWhead's visual talent calculator is much clearer for discussion. Videos on this channel are meant as a raid archive for my sake, as this will be very different in that regard. It will also be very long. I'll be taking this all in one shot without editing, so bear with me. There will be chapter breakdowns below, but I recommend going to the bottom right of this window, clicking the little cog icon, and increasing the playback speed to ×2. I'll do my best to speak clearly for that, but no problem. Promises, not problems. No promises or problems. So, I'm going to go over this official Blizzard post in front of us on their design philosophy in order to highlight some key takeaways. Then we'll swap over to WoWhead. There I'll go over the main hunter tree, how it fits that design philosophy, or not. We'll cross-reference some other available class trees, and then some comments about what I would have liked to have seen. Finally, we'll go through each of the trees, use mastering, marksmanship, and survival in a similar fashion. Before that, I'll preface this by saying it's all personal opinion, of course. A lot of people, for example, really liked Legion Hunter, and I greatly disliked it. There will always be that degree of personal preference and feedback, so I'll try to make sure to keep separate stuff that I personally would like and feedback that I think is more universal to the health of the talent tree based on this design philosophy. Obviously, there will be no tuning discussion, just design. Even with alpha out, not out yet, it's almost too easy. What am I trying to say here? Too early for those kind of comments. Alright, so let's get started. I'll basically read this whole thing so I can make comments along the way. So, let's see here. They are wanting to share what they can to start collecting detailed feedback at an early stage. So, some of their bigger goals in a class and talent reamp are to increase player agency over your character's progression and build, provide meaningful rewards while leveling, and reinforce your character's connection to both their class and their spec. The thing that I take away from here is that they are wanting to increase our control over our builds. So a character's build, they'd like to give us more control over that, and more connection to our class and spec, so kind of that Legion class fantasy thing. In addition, we felt we had to retain many features from modern World of Warcraft specializations. So they're looking to pull a lot of stuff from Shadowlands, probably BFA, maybe Legion. That would be kind of where I would say that's where the specializations had their big reamp. The specializations have many unique abilities, some of which might be central to the identity of the spec. Yeah, so again, the Legion stuff. We have a wide variety of optional bonuses that have been created at various times over the years. And this leads us back to talent trees, a concept familiar to people who played WoW before the Mists of Pandaria expansion, or if they played any of the classic stuff coming out. Visually, trees are still an intuitive way to represent the different paths one could follow while making many choices about a character. Yes. Trees also communicate dependencies and magnitude intuitively. Okay, so they want us to be able to see dependencies and magnitude of those connections intuitively without a lot of added rules. For example, talents higher in the tree are expected to be more commonly chosen, while talents lower in the tree are more optional and more geared towards shaping max level builds. So what that tells me is we should be able to start at the top of a tree. We'll be picking out a lot of the stuff at the top and working our way towards different branches. And those different branches should be very intuitive in terms of creating a build that has dependencies or magnitude. Dragonflight talent trees have some significant differences from previous versions of talent trees in World of Warcraft. First, you have not one tree, but two. Okay, we know that. This is due to combined importance of class-wide and spec-specific themes. Yeah, so the Legion stuff. Hunter versus Beast Mastery Hunter versus Marksmanship. It's a place where you can, among others, choose some abilities or passives that draw from the identity of other specs to give your character some hybrid flavor, or simply grab something particularly useful for certain content. I think that is going to be more relevant for classes that have different roles. So we have that hybrid flavor, as I say here. The spec tree is predominantly focused on bonuses that enhance your power in your main role. Yeah, so spec based. So for a hunter, it's just pure DPS. It's going to be a little bit hard to have hybrid flavor in that. It's going to be more about usefulness in certain content, or just some happy little accidents where we have good crossover that creates good damage. Another fundamental change is that more of your class is represented in the tree instead of being awarded automatically while leveling up. So yeah, you can skip all this, kind of know all that, we get levels up, and then we can spend our talent points. Some answers to questions and stuff that you may be wondering about. Some abilities are critical to my rotation. Will that mean I have to always build a certain way? Well, I think we can skip that because the answer obviously is no. A certain piece of utility is important in some content, for example, interrupts in Mythic Plus. Does this limit my choices? One that leaves the rest of your build choices very often. Sort of. The more we place it in... Okay, so we are wanting to look at all of the utility stuff to be in places where it is appropriate. That will probably mean that no matter what utility you pick, you will still be able to branch into whatever build you would like to build. Does this mean it's possible to make very bad builds? Yes. So obviously they say there are going to be limits and guardrails here, and from what they said up in the top, that should be in the form of very intuitive builds and very obvious linear progression of creating those. Set up trees with intuitive paths that lead you to reasonable builds. Yeah, okay. Does this mean that some of my points are spent on somewhat obvious choices? Yes. Doesn't this mean that I will use some of my points to rebuy some of the things that were baseline in Shadowlands? Yes. After starting with your basic class and spending 61 points in a tree, will you feel pruned? The goal is that we don't, and they'll be looking for feedback for that. I think that's going to be impossible, seeing as they are already taking utility and putting it into the main tree, and you're making all of those things were previously baseline, and now you have to pick up those. So that's obviously, that's going to be a measure of pruneness. Whether or not it's critical, hard to say without being able to actually play with it. Combinations are previously impossible. Yeah, goes without saying when you give more choices. One other set of questions is around what abilities are still awarded automatically outside of the tree. So abilities before 10, buttons were impact, so it's stuff like disengage, second groups your spell, yeah. A few nuts and bolts. I'm not sure if there's anything important here. Please bear in mind these are subject to change as we continue development. Okay. Okay, that's just talking about how it works. So, hunter talents and abilities. We wanted to give hunters new choices to mix and match talents while retaining the core identity of each individual spec. I'm assuming they mean what they tried to build in Legion as the big class spec identity push. So Beast Mastery is all about pets, Marksmanship is all about its weapon, and Survival is, well, it was supposed to be about traps and being in melee. Now it's kind of more about the traps are kind of bombs, and it's still melee. Well, we'll talk about it when we get there. Some previously specific abilities are being moved into the core tree. Okay, so Serpent Sting, Explosive Shot, stuff like Wailing Arrow and Fury of the Eagle are going into spec trees. This right here is pretty important. We're happy with how hunters as a whole are currently playing, so they are happy with Shadowlands Hunter. And hope that the new options allow you to really emphasize and build your character around what skills are most important to you while playing the game. So when they say skills and builds, I'm hoping they mean more than just the Shadowlands builds, because that is relatively shallow. There's probably only 2 or 3 max, which is not a lot of build options. So the rest of this, I think we will see over on WoWhead. Yep. Alright, so summary, my takeaway from this is that we want to A, increase player control over the character's build. We want to provide strong class and spec identity. We want to communicate build dependencies and the magnitude of those intuitively, so obviously. And the main tree should have core abilities available to all specs with some utility choices, probably defensive choices here as well. The main tree should be able to choose stuff that draws from the identity of the other specs for a little bit of hybridness, whether that's flavor or use. And then our spec tree should focus on bonuses for the main role, and for Hunter, this is just all DPS, so should be pretty easy there. Alright, we'll come over here to WoWhead's handy dandy little calculator here. So, on the top section here, we've got our... Okay, so first of all, let's talk about how we have split up these abilities that we gain. At the top here, we have both Survival and Beast Mastery gaining Kill Command, with Marksmanship gaining Kill Shot. If we are to come over here to look at Rogue, this is very similar. So we have, the first one is associated to Assassination, second one, Blind, is to Outlaw, and then Subtlety starts with Sap. It's very different here in terms of these guys are starting with their CC and not like a capstone ability. Priest kind of the same way, with this is kind of neat in that it starts with both of these here. And I believe DK is more like Hunter, where you've got one tree here, a second tree here that is Blood, and then the third tree is Unholy. So Blood, yeah, starts at the middle with the red one, and then Frost goes to Chains of Ice, and Unholy goes to Raised Dead. That one is very clearly delineated. I think Druid is as well, where we've got Feral on this side, merged a little bit with Guardian, and then Guardian merges a little bit with Restoration, with Balance on the far side. So you got the split between ranged and melee as well. For our Hunter, it's a little less clear in terms of that. We have, presumably on the left here, we have all of our Beast Mastery stuff, so this is very related to pets on the far side. And then in the middle, it's pretty much all utility, almost. It kind of blends randomly between what is and is not. Down here at the bottom, we've got a random crit talent. And then on the far right, Kill Shot and a bunch of, I would say, ranged abilities, but it's a little bit of a hybrid between just marksmanship stuff, I guess. So we've got Barrage, we've got Chimera Shot, Explosive Shots down here. And so a little bit of a departure from the other stuff in that regard. There's nothing here regarding survival. I think there is an opening chance here for a lot of questions regarding how some of these work. So we've got Countershot here, and it says for survival, Countershot is replaced by Muzzle. I wonder if that's a little bit complicated in terms of just how we're treating these things. Maybe it's just Countershot is no longer a thing, it's just Muzzle, and whether your Beast Mastery or Marksmanship is ranged. We do the same thing with Wing Clip and Concussive Shot. We got up here. It says Concussive Shot dazes the talent. Survival does not need to talent into this to get the slow. It is going to come baseline with Wing Clip based on what they said over here. To make sure I'm not crazy. Yeah, Wing Clip is baseline. So that kind of takes away a little bit from this. It's basically, you got Beast Mastery, Utility, Ranged Weapon, which, I don't know. It's not necessarily bad. I was wondering if maybe it might make more sense to have a ranged build and a melee build like we do for Druid. So in that regard, that lets us open up some possibilities of having, say, for example, a melee Beast Mastery Hunter based on choices made in the Hunter tree, or a classic style Marksmanship Hunter where you are able to melee weave for those crazy people. One thing, just in regards of looking to some of these just nodules based on swapping between other classes, I would say you need to be careful with the lopsidedness of power per point. So we've got a lot of 2 and 3 point nodules on these trees, whereas something like Rogue, when we were over here, it's pretty much all 1 and 2. And there's maybe 2 3-pointers here, and they are comboed with 2 different abilities. Basically, they're very high impact for each of these points. And I'm not getting that same vibe from Hunter over here. It's looking a lot like we are taking a lot of points and making them low impact. So when we spend a point, each one of these 3-pointers had the opportunity to be a build, so to speak, or providing more choice, more interest, maybe creating an evolution of what this is supposed to be providing us. So every single one of these 3-pointers is removing that from the hunter. It is unable to have a lot more creative freedom, so to speak. I would say 3-pointers should be reserved for high power, so every nodule that is 3-pointer prevents a cool build choice. Even here on the rogue tree, if we look at alacrity, it says your finishing move has a % chance per combo point to grant haste. The change that the point is making is just to the chance percentage, not to the haste proc. So if you're an outlaw rogue and you have more finishing moves, there is a good chance that you don't even need all 3 points in alacrity to have a very high uptime on this. That's kind of all the comment. Oh, actually, right here, agile movement. This one is interesting to me. I think this really highlights the point there about the lopsidedness of power per point in a clear way that is a little more specific in its drawing. So we've got agile movement here, which is a 3-pointer for increasing your movement speed by 2% per talent. If we come over here to the rogue one that we were just on, we see that again, but it is here and fleet-footed. So this is a high impact single point nodule where you got just you get your 15% speed with 1 point. That pairs really nicely with some of the options over here where we got outlaw, and we can come down for another 15%. The takeaway here being that because these are 1 point nodules, we still have we've basically not unlocked anything on this tree yet. We have a lot more freedom to look at some of our options. Whereas on hunter, when you are this is, not only is it far down, but it's very low impact when you're spending those points. I would have liked to have seen this broken out into 2 more talent choices. So we have 1 point in agile movement for 6% increased movement speed, and 2 other choices that can provide us something that might be a little more fun. Maybe not fun isn't the word, but a little more different. Maybe that hybrid flavor that we're missing. So just with the breakdown of this, we've got our kill command, we've got our kill shot, and when we are building this out, we have the opportunity of, say, unlocking, my goodness, most of it before we get into the 8-pointer. So there's really only 2 choices that we're not taking here. Our first row into this is going to be dictated based on our choices up here, which controls all of our utility dynamics. The one thing I don't like about this middle section is that the entire thing is utility, and based on your utility choices, that is what unlocks your 20 pointers. So, for example, if we only come over here to this side, maybe we want countershot and misdirection and trap, we are now unable to unlock our left side with Beast Mastery. We are going to have to dedicate a little bit more over here, which is not the end of the world, I suppose, but when you're making choices like improved trank shot, where you are gaining 5 focus, 10 focus per point for an ability you're not going to be using very often, I feel like this is something that you should just bake that into tranquilizing shot, or at least only have it be a 1-pointer. I don't know if it really deserves a point here on a utility tree, especially just from glancing through here, we don't exactly have any defensives. It's both men pet here, and this exhilaration one is for the pet. It's not for us. This one is kind of low impact in terms of actually providing defensive measures. One thing that I would say here is, for example, we could break this into 2 nodules and bring in the Feign Death Conduit. Let's see what else we got in terms of conduits. These are kind of low impact stuff, but we could have Marksman. Here's another one. Here's another defensive that we lose going into Shadowlands. Or, sorry, Dragonflight. So Resilience of the Hunter could be a 1-pointer. Marksmanship's Advantage could be a 1-pointer. Even Rejuvenating Wind, I didn't see that on any of the nodules. I think this would have been a good opportunity to maybe put other defenses that hunters have been lacking, something more passive. Maybe we could bring back Spear Bond. over here on the left, where we've got 3 points into Improved Men Pet. I just make the Improved Men Pet 1 nodule, and then you can also present us with the option for Spirit Bond. Also don't see Master's Call anywhere. I'm not sure if PvP talents are still going to be a thing, but if not, those are all missing in some capacity as well. Not Master's Call, sorry. What's it called? Come over here and take a look. What? Yeah, Roar Sacrifice, or any of these really. Survival Tactics, Tracker's Net, Mending Bandage. So we're on a Marksmanship tree, but I don't really want to start there. Let's look at Beast Mastery. So in terms of identity for Beast Mastery, like we said, we've got most of our talent tree down here on the left side for the Hunter talents, which means we're gonna have to pick up most of these things. Alright, so let's just go straight down. This is interesting. I think it's a little bit weird that Intimidation is kind of locked behind these choices, where we've got Healing for our pet, Misdirection to our pet, or Shrink Shot. I don't think these are very high impact in terms of Hunter builds, hybridity, or usefulness. I think they are kind of niche stuff. I'd like to see more impact in terms of those choices there. Maybe Intimidation is locked behind a more potent defensive. Again, Beastmaster, so this is really a cornerstone of the Beastmastery spec. You're pretty much forced to come down here to take this. I don't think that's entirely intuitive when you're coming down this way, because if you are looking for a Beastmaster who is going to say, do leveling, do Mythic Plus, do raiding, maybe do PvP, you're gonna as well be on the right side of the tree, picking up some of these things for the Hunter. You'll probably come over here for Camo or Scatter, and then you have to somehow make your way back over here, which is not very intuitive. To the left. I also think it's so I believe the intention of this nodule is to be provide that hybrid between Beast Mastery and Survival, yes, but also to shoehorn in Survival that is otherwise missing in the Hunter tree. Not necessarily a bad thing based on how it's built. It might be very convoluted if we were to have a split of melee and ranged, like the example before. But it is what it is, just a general comment. So going back to our key identity here of how they want to build these, they are expecting the stuff that you are going to use early to be, or more often to be early on, which looks right. We've got Barb Shot, Multi-Shot, Cobra Shot. Those are our trifecta of Beast Mastery main abilities. I would say in terms of a main ability for Beast Mastery, everyone would think of Kill Command first. Of course, that's complicated a little bit with the current iteration of Survival, so it makes sense to be on the Hunter tree. In terms of how this is built, so to speak, I would say it's a little bit scattered. So again, we've got a lot of these 2-pointers, we've got not a whole lot of 3-pointers actually now that I'm looking at it, maybe here on Thrill of the Hunt. It is not entirely high impact. I'm not sure if it needs to be a 3-pointer. Maybe we can make that we can make this a 1-pointer, and some of these 2-pointers can be 1-pointers as well, and that will let us flush out some of the build concepts on this a little better. So a lot of the stuff that I see people talking about here in terms of Beast Mastery builds, they're very hyped about what they're calling as a zoo build, I guess. The zoo build is what I would call Dire Beast. This is something that has been brewing since BFA, but because Dire Consequences never worked with Dire Beast, it was basically dead in the water in BFA. There's a chance that this will also be the case in Dragonflight if Dire Beast does not have its haste benefit stacking with some of the other Dire Beast zoo properties. Whether or not that comes in or not, to be seen. I would say if this tree is staying as is, with a lot of Dire Beast focused items scattered throughout both branches, all 3 branches really, that this is a cornerstone ability that really needs to work this time. It really needs to have high impact with that haste benefit. Beast Mastery history-wise, so I would say three big builds that really made Beast Mastery strong in the past. A, the BM Nyalotha build with Aspect of the Wild, and B, the Warlords of Draenor Focus Fire build. And the thing that both of these had in common was obviously this dynamic here on Barb Shot, where we had our Focus Fire, I guess, so to speak, where we've got this interchanging between the pet's attack speed and the hunter's haste. So what I would have liked to have seen here is the ability to kind of revisit all of those elements that made Beast Mastery what it is for the past few expansions, with both BFA, Shadowlands, a little bit in Legion, more so in WoD since that's when Barb Shot changed. When we get down here, we kind of get access to our trifecta of cooldowns. Let me just fill this out real quick. So Bestial Wrath, Bloodshed, Aspect of the Wild, really these 2. These are the big CDs for Beast Mastery that have kind of always been in this new iteration. And one of the main things that I see here is the inability to kind of create this dynamic with Aspect of the Wild that it used to have. And what I mean by that is, actually, since we're on WoWhead, let's just come up here to the search bar. So we have here our Primal Instincts Azerite power, where it turned Aspect of the Wild into this big mastery boost. It gave us a charge of Barb Shot. That was a very big element in terms of what made the BM Nyalotha Aspect of the Wild build so good. Would have liked an option here to build a, I don't know if I want to call it a Aspect of the Wild build, I'd call it more a Dance of Death build. So again, another Azerite power where we've got our Barb Shot having a chance equal to our crit to grant us agility. So this is kind of a Barb Shot build. We see a lot of talents here regarding Barb Shot. Currently in this version of the tree, Barb Shot pretty much only plays with either the Dire Beast Zoo build, and not a whole lot else. It's just this normal thing. Would have liked to have seen Primal Instincts paired with Dance of Death, paired with Thrill of the Hunt at a 1-pointer, not a 3-pointer. Maybe one with the packs. It should be down here. Yep. So we have our auto crits giving us 20% extra crit or chance to reset our Barb Shots. Wild Instincts as well. I'm not sure if that's here somewhere. Yes, it is. So when Call of the Wild is active, Barb Shot has 25% chance to gain a charge anytime. So we are having this dynamic now with our Barb Shot build being Primal Instincts with big mastery boost paired with Dance of Death, where we are proccing our crit and agi procs the same way we were in Nyalotha. Another big aspect to this that I would say is missing on the tree to kind of make it functional work, maybe take one of these 2-pointers for it, is Rapid Reload. Rapid Reload being the trait that allowed us to reduce our CD of Aspect of the Wild by 1 second per target hit, so big AoE boost. That would make sense to me to have kind of in this branch over here where we have Aspect of the Wild and one with the Pact and some things for Barb Shot already. It makes sense to me, especially here where we've got Barbed Wrath, this new thing that is reducing the Aspect of the Wild, to split this into multiple points instead of 2 points each. Give us the opportunity to have Primal Instincts, have Rapid Reload, have Dance of Death, and make that build here if we want to. Similarly, just to touch back on what I was saying regarding Focus Fire, it's very similar to Barb Shot. Struggling to think of the best thing to put into the search bar here for WoWhead, so I'm just gonna come over here. So this is an opinion article from the Warlords of Draenor beta. And it was really more about marksmanship and survival, but the one thing that we kind of had as a community in that era, which I guess what it says here, many of the posters seem to enjoy Beast Mastery while feeling Marks and Survival hollow in comparison. That's basically what it is. So people liked Beast Mastery at this time. So, what made Beast Mastery good here is the positive feedback loop, where we had all of these dynamics. So the focus fire, it is very similar to Barb Shot, but not quite. So Barb Shot is the attack speed only for the pet, and there is no longer a component where we can consume those stacks to put haste onto the player. And so there are some abilities listed here that are not in the talent tree that could have been. So for example, using Focus Fire after Cobra Strike's proc to get into Wild Hunt in the middle of Beast Wrath was a big burst at the time. One of those fun PvP builds where you were micromanaging those things. And what that means is we sew down here on our BM passives, it says Cobra Strikes. Our Arcane Shot causes basic crits, stacking to 6. And those would feed our Frenzy, which would then feed our Invigoration, where basic attacks return focus to the hunter, along with Go for the Throat, where our auto shots gave focus to the pet. So a really strong cycle here between the hunter getting focus, the pet getting focus, the hunter getting stacks of Frenzy, and then the hunter consuming those stacks of Frenzy to take away the attack speed on the pet to get some haste. The big component here, which is the Wild Hunt, is no longer shown, is a... I don't think this will show up here if I search for it. No, but it was an ability for... It was basically a passive on the pets, where after you got over a certain threshold of focus, those basic attacks that it would use after that threshold would consume more focus, but do a lot more damage. Would have been interesting to see something like that show up here. Obviously, it's a little bit more further back in time being in WoD, and the dynamic of Barb Shot is obviously the thing that replaced it, even though it lost the second half of that feedback loop. I think that may have made sense over here, where we're kind of just fluffing up points, where we've got Dire Command, which is basically Dire Consequence, just into a 3-pointer for some reason, along with Stomp, which I don't think should be a 2-pointer either. And so this is another point of contention for me, where we've got In for the Kill. This dynamic appears in all 3 of the spec trees, which to me tells me it could have just been in the Hunter tree. So we can take one of these 3-pointers on the Hunter tree, just make it this dynamic of In for the Kill, and then change the wording for the specs, because it's all the same thing. Your ability has a chance to cause Kill Shot to be usable on any target, regardless of the health. That is ever present on all of the trees. This here is taking up 2 points. And again, those 2 points could have been something like Rapid Reload, it could have been Primal Instincts, could have been Dance of Death. In regards to this Dire Consequence thing that we've been talking about this whole time, it was a lead up from the Focus Fire discussion, so this is sort of like a Warlock Imp build, but instead of the Warlock Imps, obviously you're summoning a lot of pets, and the benefit of these pets are they are gaining the attack speed from Barb Shot, potentially. Unclear yet, but I would assume that is the intention. And the pets that are being summoned give the player haste. So again, that players get haste, 100 pets get attack speed, you just swap between them. My problem in terms of this current tree with that is that these things are all over the talent tree. So we've got Dire Beast here, we've got, as you go further down, this is fine, you got more stuff down here that where your Barb Shots affect your summon pets. I assume that is in relation to the Dire Beast. But then on the far left, when we come over here, this is where we start seeing the main components of those Dire Consequence builds. So Dire Command here is literally Dire Consequence, where Kill Command has a chance to summon a Dire Beast. Again, not a fan of the 3-point on this, I think it should just be a 1-pointer. This would then let you build out more clearly that Dire Consequence build. So with Dire Beast, with Dire Consequence, with Call of the Wild, with Killer Cobra, with Blood Frenzy, even Murder of Crows, honestly, because from what I understand, I don't think this has been changed. These were previously being acted as a pet, so it was not a dot where the dot was snapshot. Each attack was read separately, and that's what enables it to be buffed by Mastery. Something else here that is under a similar vein, Snake Trap, could have made an appearance. I may have been a little bit crazy in terms of the zoo build that is being proposed here, but that would be my feedback. I would have liked to have seen a clearer, more intuitive, as they made it, delineation of these builds, because right now I think the build is all over the tree. When you're building it, it's kind of a 2-pronger, you're basically filling out both sides in some regard. Obviously this is not the build, but just to give a point. it is possible to get all the way to the bottom of all of those. And that is a direct comparison here to the outlaw tree, where we see, so down here through the middle, you see our core outlaw abilities. And then on the left is sort of an ambush build, where once we get down to the very bottom, everything that we've picked prior to this suddenly becomes super strong. And again, on the other side, where we've got a blade flurry kind of build, and those choices that we make get super strong down here. That sort of progression is missing on the hunter tree. I don't know if that was intentional, or we just kind of wanted to only have 2 or 3 builds on, not even 2 or 3, I would say 1 or 2 builds on the hunter beast mastery section, where you are fleshing out both left side and the right side in different dynamics, with obviously a dire consequence if it works, and the kill command alternating with cobra shot. That is most of my comments for beast mastery here. I think that some of the builds that could have been, in terms of this design philosophy, where, what was our summary? So number 1, increased player control of your character's build. I do think there is control here. I do think as well, though, however, these 3-pointers take away from that. Control over the build would be more potent if we had a few more 1-pointers, 2-pointers. At least not 3-pointers that are only giving us 2% stat increases. In terms of class and spec identity, providing a few more build options, kind of in the history vein of these specs, would have been nice. So again, that Nyalotha barb shot stuff over here, the Dire Beast Zoo possibility on this side. So that would mean Dire Beast kind of flips over to this side and Thrill Hunt goes to the other. Maybe even a return of some sort of focus fire dynamic with barb shot would have been interesting as well. In terms of communicating the dependencies and magnitude, again, yeah, I don't think that was very successful here. It's not intuitive at all to build the Zoo build or the kill command alternating with cobra shot, since it's on both sides of the spectrums really, and even way down here between Alpha Predator. At least not as clear as some of the other ones, I'll put it that way. I do think, obviously, every spec focuses heavily on the main role. So Beast Mastery is, all of these specs, or all of these nodules rather, are Beast Mastery related. Definitely true here. I do like seeing this Beast Cleave addition in terms of, we get our Beast Cleave, and then we also get this very cool addition here with Kill Cleave, where Kill Command now strikes your enemies. I would have said that 4 talent points dedicated to this seems a little intense, especially when the conclusion is the build opportunities here for Beast Mastery are a little watered down. So to that end, I would say Beast Cleave should be a 1-pointer, and Kill Cleave, I almost want to say this should just be baked into Beast Cleave, so after your multi-shot, your pet's attacks, period, strike all nearby enemies. So that's your auto attacks, that's your basic attacks, and that's your kill command. I do see a point for making Kill Cleave its own, just because of how potent kill command can be. Especially if we are going to incorporate anything that juices up Aspect of the Wild with Dance of Death and stuff like that. Alright, that's all I have for Beast Mastery. We'll move on to, I want to say Marksmanship, but we'll do Survival. So, when we open Survival, we should know what the key ability is, and the key ability we're being presented here is Raptor Strike. That's fine. But I think it would have been interesting to see some change here in terms of some of the other classes where we have multiple options at the top. Maybe for kind of that discussion with Beast Mastery, maybe we have Barb Shot and Focus Fire. That might be interesting. For Survival, obviously we are a melee class, and we are not doing a melee range split in the Hunter tree, so everything that is related to melee survival has to go in the Survival tree. I think that is a little bit at odds in terms of creating a hybrid crossover with the Hunter tree, because obviously a lot of these abilities here for this section of the Hunter tree are dependent on having a ranged weapon. So you can't fire an explosive shot without a ranged weapon unless this is changed. Same with Barrage, same with Chimera Shot. Not sure about Chakrams. And Master Marksman completely useless because it specifically mentions ranged attacks. So a lot of this is just not useful at all for survival. And again, the middle section here is all utility, so we don't really have a lot of opportunity to get hybrid or usefulness changes for survival in this tree. It's really just a matter of, do we want to give up Alpha Predator for Killer Instinct? Maybe Stampede. Since we are not using the Hunter tree for delineation between melee and ranged, that's fine. That'd be a big rework. I don't know if they have the resources to do that. Just handle it all in their survival tree. That's fine. So I would say the key abilities when thinking of survival. So there's really only 2 versions of melee survival right now because of the Legion situation. So you've got number 1, Shadowlands with the Wildfire Bomb and Kill commands, and Legion with Mongoose Bite and Butchery. Obviously, based on the tree here, just on a quick look of some stuff that we got, I would say that both of these builds in this iteration are not possible. And I'll try to explain that to the best of my ability in terms of how a lot of the key things that make those specs or that playstyle work are not present in this tree. Which is really disappointing because I see a lot of points here that are 3-pointers. So we've got Predator, we've got Improved Wildfire Bomb, Lunge, Sweeping Spear, tons and tons of 3-pointers. And to see so many 3-pointers when there's a lot of survival abilities missing that make these specs complete is kind of sad to see, but maybe we can change that. So the Shadowlands build, the one with Wildfire Bomb and Kill command, is made possible by resetting kill commands in order to get or play with our Wildfire Infusion Pheromone Red Bomb. The one point that made this work is the tier bonus from the current set. So we've got our, when kill command resets, it has a 40% chance to make our next Wildfire Bomb incur no cooldown. That's Mad Bombardier. And the 4-piece of our Wildfire Bombs dealing 30% additional damage increased to 80% for our bombs that are reset by kill command. That is really the element that made the Wildfire Infusion situation work in terms of just basically super juicing these bombs. So we're using kill command and our resets to super juice our bombs and get more bombs. However, in order to have that work, we need basically the tier set bonus, which is not here. Instead, we are coming down here and we're spending 1 point for Wildfire Bomb. Some other things to unlock our 8. We get our Guerrilla Tactics, so now we are buying back our Wildfire. Basically every functionality of Wildfire has been split into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to get Wildfire Infusion, almost at least 8 to 10 talent points just to make Wildfire Bomb become whole again. And we do not have that dynamic with the 2-piece that actually makes it work. So our thing here where we've got our kill command resets, resetting our Wildfire. Instead we have a small chance of kill shot doing it, and our carve is maintained. So would have liked to have seen a lot of these 3-pointers for the bomb build be put into a 1-pointer. I think it's really low impact when we've got these 0.5s showing up on our talent tree. And we could put our Mad Bombardier right here, and maybe the 4-piece tie into the Mad Bombardier. Basically, if you're going to put a build on the tree and have to invest so many items into it, but then not have the key item that makes it work, it just seems like a waste of resources. But again, obviously, this is really dependent on tuning. I think the major component missing from that is just the reset from the 2-piece. So we'll reset all this and we'll talk about the other survival build, which is the Legion build, which seems to have been conveniently placed over here on this side with Mongoose. So obviously, Legion build, a lot of spinning plates, a lot of buffs to maintain. We've got Mongoose Bite and Butchery, so we see our Mongoose Bite here and we see our Butchery here as well. So we'll say, okay, great, you've got both components needed for the build. But no. So Legion build, I've actually got a video here where I had to refresh my memory a little bit in terms of all of the elements that came along. So here's a video of me doing just the base Butchery, where it's like, okay, here's the damage threshold, where we just press the button of Butchery. It was kind of lackluster. Just kind of press a button and it does stuff. Here. Oh, that was Fury of the Eagle. And then Mongoose Power. So that was the refresh there from my memory in terms of the dynamics that made that situation actually work. So what that means is, number one, there was a whole bunch of damage boosts that you had to maintain in order to make this work. And that was Way of the Machnathal for 12% extra damage. Mongoose Power, which, actually, you know what? I think these will show up on my head. Yep, so here's Way of the Machnathal. Raptor Strike grants you Machnathal Tactics, increasing your attack power by 3%, stacking up to 4 times. So this was one of those spinning plates you had to maintain. You had to maintain your 4 stack of Machnathal for your 12% gain. Mongoose Power, so when Mongoose Fury reaches 6 applications, you gain 15% increased damage to all abilities for 10 seconds. So that is a stacking 12% onto the 15% that you would want. And that comes from here. So Mongoose Bite. Mongoose Fury increases the damage of Mongoose Bite by 15% for 15 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. Once you got up to 6, although I guess this says 5 now, so once you reach 5 applications, you would gain this damage boost to all abilities and not just Mongoose Bite. Another big component to that, not on this tree, Snake Hunter. So this would give you 3 charges of Mongoose Bite right away. So that would be your 1, 2, 3 Mongoose Bite, and instead of waiting for recharges, you would use Snake Hunter and get 1, 2, 3. Boom, you've activated your Mongoose Power. Again, Coordinated Assault was a 20% gain. It is no longer a 20% gain on this tree, which we'll talk about later. Another component of that was Hell Carver, very big piece, along with Bone Apron, and those don't tie into Mongoose Bite, they tie into Carve. And so looking here at the Bone Apron, we've got Raptor Strike, increasing the damage of our next butchery or carve by 10%, stacking up to 10 times. So you got your 4 stack of Machnathal, you got your 6 stack of Mongoose Power, and you're trying to get your 10 stack of Bone Apron. And that is going to be your big burst of damage in that window once you've managed to spin all your plates correctly for butchery or for Fury the Eagle. On top of Bone Apron was another one. Freezos. So this is just a flat damage increase, another 10%. What was the other one I said? Hellcarver. So Hellcarver deals Carve, which is also butchery, deals 3% increased damage for each additional target hit. This was a big component to what made butchery actually so potent, and it was not brought along with us after Legion. Which is why we saw the rise of this bomb build, is because Hellcarver was missing. So we've got all of the components here, the base components to be able to make the Legion build, where we've got Mongoose Bite and Butchery, and then everything down here is not related to it no longer. So we've got Precision on a 3-point where it's literally just our pets have increased critical strike chance. This is not contributing to the build. I think instead we're missing A, Way of the Machnathal, B, Mongoose Power, C, Snake Hunter, and then I don't know why I was giving an alphabet number, but Way of the Machnathal, Mongoose Power, Snake Hunter, Coordinated Assault being a 20% damage increase, Bone Apron, Friezo's Finger Trap, and Hellcarver. So that is a lot of things that are missing from this build that made it work, made it potent, made it that stacking buff situation that is kind of just robbed with all of these 3-pointers. To me, seeing all of these 3-pointers, especially here, we got 3, 3, 3, 3, all in a row. 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Basically 5 3-pointers all stacked together. This tells me that we didn't really know what to do for survival. Maybe we felt like there weren't enough items. But I mean, I just listed off how many? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 missing things for just the one build. We could even go this a step further. If we had ranged in melee in the Hunter tree, we could bring back the possibility of that Black Arrow and Lock and Load build. Especially with Explosive Shot down here, although it's a little bit different nowadays. Even if it's not ranged versus melee, I think the opportunity to bring a dot-based spec back to survival could have been an option. So you got a lot of that Black Arrow, you got your Lock and Load, you got your Explosive Shot, and your Serpent Sting, in terms of being a very basically not a super easy throw your face on Wildfire Bomb kill command over and over, and not a super difficult Mongoose Power, Wild Call, Butchery, Damage, Amplifier for Legion build, but a simpler testimony to the past survival, which was very simple. You just maintain dots, and it was kind of chill to play. So you'd do your Black Arrow or your Black Spear, whatever it is, and you would just react to procs that way. However, I do think maybe 3 branches for survival might be a little much. I would just focus on kind of what we got here with the Wildfire Bomb on the left and the old survival Mongoose stuff on the right, and just make sure that the actual components that made those what they are kind of get brought into play. Especially this over here doesn't really make a whole lot of sense here. The eagle, it's tied to, should be tied to this side with Mongoose Bite. I would say it is if you're building a bomb build, you don't really want to spend 4 seconds doing your Fear of the Eagle, being trapped in that, because it means it's taking away from your ability to throw bombs and throw kill commands. So, swap these maybe. Spearhead, really interesting. I don't know if this is made out of attempt to evolve survival, or because we felt like we didn't have enough points for survival. So we got our Coordinated Assault, which is now completely different. It's a lunge with flanking strike, sort of, where you and your pet charge your enemy, striking them for physical damage, and you then get an empowerment based on that. So Carve reduces the cooldown of your Wildfire Bomb, or Killshot applies Bleed. I think that was supposed to be a tie-in to the bomb build on the left, where we got more resets, or the Mongoose Power or Mongoose Bite build on the right, where we don't seem to remember what it was actually about. Again, Coordinated Assault was a big part of the Legion build, where we're stacking those damage amplifiers because it was that 20% amp. We do see that sort of returned here in Spearhead, but the problem is that this is actually really cool. I'm very excited to see how this is visually, how you managed to merge the Hunter and the Pet into one. But while active, your pet damage is increased by 25%, and that's it. So this does not affect our other abilities like Bomb. It does not affect Fear the Eagle. It doesn't affect Carve or Butchery. It only affects our pet damage and then Mongoose Bite dealing damage, along with Kill Command having 20% increased chance to reset. I almost wonder if this was supposed to be a marriage of the two-piece, but bringing it under control. I think without the two-piece Mad Bombardier, the Wildfire Bomb spec just isn't a thing anymore. So I don't know if this solves that problem. I also think it takes away from the Mongoose build, at least historically. Especially if, aside from everything going on here, we are keeping Raptor Strike the same. Raptor Strike does very little damage. It is very little damage. Obviously not a tuning situation, so can't make remarks there. Maybe it won't be once you've empowered it up to Mongoose Bite and all that other good stuff. I think we kind of lost an opportunity here with Flanking Strike being just a forget me button, where we could have maybe potentially unmarried survival from this dynamic of Kill Command, and given Kill Command back to the identity of Beast Mastery. So Flanking Strike really is the survival flavor of Kill Command, and you're showing this here again with Spearhead, that the unique survival play with its Hunter pet is to kind of work with it. If you remember the original incarnation of Flanking Strike, it was more catered to kind of a solo experience where you would use Flanking Strike, and if the Hunter currently had the target, the pet would get a very large increase of threat. So it was a little bit like Growl in the regards, but just like an extra Growl. Would have been interesting to see maybe that dynamic return a little bit, maybe not for leveling. Well, actually maybe for leveling, but also maybe for raiding in Mythic Plus, where Flanking Strike kind of swaps the Hunter and the pet in terms of their health pools. So you could potentially use the survival pet as a shield. Maybe it's not necessarily threat-based, but it's just a shield-based situation. Kind of a missed opportunity there to unmarry survival from Kill Command, but it is what it is. I do think, obviously, having Kill Command between Beast Mastery and survival lets us have this hybrid dynamic with our tree that we cannot go melee range with. So that's fine. Maybe a missed opportunity in terms of creative outlet, but I don't know how strapped for time we are. One thing I will say that I really like to see coming for survival is right here, Lunge thank you. I have been very adamant about this since Legion, that it makes no sense for survival not to have an increased range on its polearm. It is a very long weapon. That is the entire class fantasy, as you will, for polearms, is to have a longer reach. And it wouldn't have been, like, I probably wouldn't have even noticed this if it weren't for the fact that Rogue got that. These rogues with these tiny little daggers, and the hunters with the polearms during Legion, where there's this big class push for identity and fantasy, didn't really sit right with me. I do like to see that it has made its way here. Again, I would say be very wary of our point to spend power. So we see lunge here is, again, a 3-pointer for 1, 2, 3 yards. I don't want to directly compare to Rogue too much, but we come over here, and Rogue has that same talent point somewhere, acrobatic strikes, for an extra 3 yards on 1 point. And now, obviously, a one-to-one comparison between classes is a little bit silly, but I do think this enables our ability to branch this out a little bit more, give us some options that we are completely missing these kind of triangles in survival that we could have had if we had done a few less 3-pointers. So yeah, those are my big comments here with survival in terms of design. I guess we'll scroll back up to my notes before, where we've got our summary of the design philosophy. So, increase player control over the character's build. Yes and no. I think we have an opportunity here to go a very clear delineated option of Wildfire Bomb, and a very clear delineated option for going on this bite. I don't think it's entirely built up both situations in terms of the full build. I think there are big major components missing from it, and I'm not sure they play entirely differently from nothing. I don't think the playstyle of this is entirely complete without its other elements, but maybe I'm wrong. I also do think some of these are maybe a little misplaced in terms of their impact, but I guess we'll have to see. So moving on to our final tree here, Marksmanship. I feel like, so Marksmanship is kind of the spec that back in Mists of Pandaria I kind of came known for championing, and I kind of found myself stuck in terms of providing good feedback here, because it's really been the same for Shadowlands, BFA, Legion in a lot of regards from a core aspect. And anyway, we'll just get into it. So the key abilities for Marksmanship. Aim shot. Obviously, really, that's about it. When people think of Marksmanship, they think of aim shot. I think that's fine to have that right up here. We are getting our improved steady shot, which makes steady shot the focus spender dynamic, which is fine. Killing blow, I really expected to be piercing shots. I think that's just because of the icon. I expected that to come back. Other things that you kind of come up with in terms of marksmanship abilities, I guess it's really just aim shot, arcane shot, and the steady shot dynamic. Maybe a little bit of rapid fire from Shadowlands, which is basically the replacement of mark shot from Legion. If you're going super old on us, we can come over here to Chimera Shot, where we've got our stings and stuff like that. That was a big part of marksmanship in the past. In terms of the historical use of marksmanship, I would say it's always been, not always, but it was a very powerful single target build and was not really good at AoE. It played a lot in terms of high burst really quick, especially with careful aim. In more recent times, that has been reversed. It is not very good at single target. It is very powerful in AoE, especially with this rapid fire volley situation. In Legion, we of course had that cleave everything build with Sidewinders and Barrage and Hunter's Mark, throwing Mark Shot everywhere. Don't see that make a return here. Personally, I'm very happy to see that, but I guess some other people would have liked to have seen a return of Mark Shot in some regard, just to get that spread AoE a little easier. So when I think of some builds for marksmanship that I would expect to see, the first one would be Throne of Thunder, where, and I know that is a little bit off kilter, because Throne of Thunder was primarily dominated by survival and beast mastery, but I think it was also a hallmark of marksmanship design, where we had steady focus, which is here currently. It came back, and aim shot, along with reducing procs down to instant aim shots, along with a whole bunch of abilities to rotate around and basically have that really difficult struggle to juggle the main powerhouse of aim shot with all these extra buttons that we'd also want to maintain, like glaive toss and chimera shot and dire beast, actually, with murdered crows and sting. We don't really have those necessarily here in the marksmanship tree, but we do have some of them on the left, where we've got stampede, we've got chimera shot, we've got barrage, we've got serpent sting, we've got explosive shot. So that is a potential situation where we're balancing a big number of extra buttons with the focus dynamic of aim shot. I don't think it would necessarily fit with Shadowlands marksmanship, but it would with the Throne of Thunder one. I don't know how you would bring that back into its incarnation, but it is what it is. Some other things here that kind of, especially with all these icons showing up, kind of expected to see. True aim, where successive aim shot and arcanes at the same target increase those shots' damage by a certain amount, stacking to 10 or so times, with a limit of one target. So again, that's single target focus, especially with bullseye here. Another situation that I kind of expected with all these weird icons: killshot, patient sniper, so increasing the damage bonus of vulnerability, and obviously vulnerability is not here either, where we were procking that from a proc chain of autos into arcane, into a hunter's mark proc, into our mark shot, which is no longer in existence. It was replaced by rapid fire. And that vulnerability that it would apply would increase damage taken by from aim shot. So kind of surprised not to see that a build tree on here. Not necessarily a bad thing, just kind of surprising, seeing as that is the most recent history for marksmanship. And again, we see a lot of... So, I guess my main complaint of this file, or not, sorry, this file, the marksmanship tree, is we have a lot of talent points really aimed at killshot. And I'm not entirely convinced that killshot is going to be a very impactful ability. It feels like the only reason we're doing that is because we have started the hunter tree with killshot. And if that's true, is that necessary? Because I mean, if you are starting on the outlaw tree with blind, you're not really making a build here with rotating around blind. So I don't think it's necessary to do with hunter and killshot to take so many resources out of the tree and dedicate it to killshot. I would take some of these 3-pointers that are, or 2-pointers that are aimed at killshot, make them 1-pointers, and kind of increase our ability to have different builds that are not just killshot gives aim shot a chance to recharge faster over 3 points. Another point of contention for me here, bursting shot. So I feel like this is utility. I'm not entirely sure it belongs in the marksmanship tree over the hunter tree, but obviously we filled up the hunter tree with a lot of this fluff that probably doesn't deserve to be there so much, with so much 2-pointers, 3-pointers, but bursting shot, I guess, if it's here, I would like to see it be the improved version of bursting shot. So the current incarnation of bursting shot is kind of unwieldy. It often misses. There were a number of times where I would use bursting shot in, say, Mythic Plus or PvP, and I would get laughed at by all my friends because I would be right up next to the mob and nothing would happen. You just see this big explosion and it would whiff. See if I can find a mob here. So theoretically, you come up to here, you press that, and it goes flying far away. It usually works pretty well if you are not me, I guess. But basically the comment is it's a cone where if you're right here, you got a group of 5 mobs, you're probably not going to hit them very efficiently. And the intention of big lugs out from my records. The intention of bursting shot is really to give marksmanship the ability to kite. And that was kind of PvP oriented, I believe, especially in terms of Lone Wolf, where we are no longer having a pet tank for us. We kind of have to hit something and run away and shoot it, and it's marksmanship isn't the best equipped for it because we have to stand here and cast a really long aim shot. So that was a tool to help it with some of the problems that we introduced by bringing in Lone Wolf and really long aim shot cast times. So to me, this kind of tumor over here is a band-aid. I would maybe consider putting that in utility situation here, maybe right plop in the middle where this weird missing point is, or at least make it have a bigger cone, have it have a bigger knockback, and whatever damage allocation you're going to get that. I wouldn't want to see rotational, obviously, because this is a utility knockback. This is a little bit weird to me, when I wasn't expecting it to be that, where you fall below 40% health and you will have your knockback guaranteed. Yeah. I don't know if that really plays into the role of marksmanship, being a sniper, but I'll just leave that as an open-air comment. So one of the builds that is kind of missing here that I really liked recently in Shadowlands, actually, didn't work very well when I was doing it, is the PvP Necro build. You can see here I haven't saved my set any longer, but how that worked is it was a nice kind of one-shot pop where you have death chakrams and you increase your focus regeneration from that chakrams with True Shot, and you're able to throw out really quick, powerful aim shots with double tap. But then you also get the 16% increased damage from chakrams, you get Plagueys preemptive strikes for another 12% damage increase, you get Kevin's Oozling giving another 6% damage taken, a careful aim, obviously over 7% HP, in PvP was only 30%. So you would double tap, get your death chakram, you get all your stacking benefits, you True Shot for your fast aim shot, and then you would shoot this aim shot as the explosive shot from the chakram legendary was going off. And because of that extra explosive shot, it was very potent. It was kind of like that situation where I was talking earlier with Beast Mastery with Focus Fire. So it was like, surprise, here's your big burst of damage. That's kind of fun. I like that. Same with Survival with, right here where we see Latent Poison Injector. I like to see that come back. I don't know if it'll be as potent as it was, but it was certainly a fun dynamic for me where you kind of just get this control over your burst. Missing a little bit that situation of burst control here, but I do see the more linear option here for marksmanship builds. So you got your rapid fire AoE situation working up over here, where you, I don't know if this is the right place for double tap, but you get a whole build right here that is very AoE focused around rapid fire. And then on the other side, you get your, I don't know, it's a little less clear to me what this side was about, but you got your whole lone wolf and you get a whole bunch of kill shot stuff. And then randomly Legacy of the Windrunners, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, is basically I'm spending 5 points to bring back Wild Quiver, and if you remember, Wild Quiver was our previous mastery where auto shots would have a chance to proc an additional shot. So a little bit off-putting to see 5 whole points dedicated to what was essentially a 1% mastery boost. But again, obviously that's all tuning related, so don't have strong comments there. Killshot would have been an interesting dynamic in Shadowlands with our Venthyr build that never came to be because it was nerfed, so no comments there either. Just that in terms of the builds that I would have expected to see from marksmanship aren't really here. I did have one question here in regards to volley, so let's say we come all the way down in terms of getting our AoE stuff. Let's just put random points somewhere. So we get Streamline for rapid fire, we come down to rapid fire, and we get volley. So now we have a volley that is going to give us the effects of trick shots, but we have not actually bought trick shots. So I'm assuming that because volley will just give you trick shots, you don't actually need to have this point. But yeah, it's not very clear as to whether or not you get volley and you can still get trick shots in volley window without actually having trick shots. My assumption would be yes. I don't know why anybody would ever talent that way, but... So when trick shot fades or is consumed, your next multi-shot will deal additional damage. So this is Barrage, I believe, from this situation here. Bombardment, multi-crits cause 20% less focus and cause 60% more damage. Yeah, so it's basically Bombardment. Not sure about the new name. Not sure about it being a 2-pointer. But obviously 200% additional damage is way more than 60%, so there's that. Yeah, I really wish I had a lot more to say about marksmanship, because I feel like there was a lot of potential here that is just kind of all over the place. It is interesting to see the return of Bullseye and not Deathblow, but Bullseye. I am wondering if this will have the same fate as Legion, where it kind of negatively impacts the Hunter ability to do big burst damage, because we're tuning it around the fact that the longer the fight, the more Bullseye will ramp up, the more execute damage we'll do. Probably still won't be the best execute class in terms of other classes like Warrior or Shadow Priest again. But yeah, that was kind of the dynamic of Bullseye in the past, is I felt like it robbed some of the potential for the Hunter's other toolkit. So hopefully that doesn't become the case again, but we'll see. Bullseye obviously very liked in the past, so makes sense to see it show up. Since I hovered over Deathblow, we'll talk about that, like I mentioned earlier. So we've got our Deathblow aim shot has a chance to grant us a charge of kill shot, and that kill shot can be used on any target regardless of the current health. Come over here to Survival, and that is somewhere around here. Deadly Duo, when kill command's cooldown is reset, you have a chance to reset the cooldown of kill shot, and your next kill shot can be used on any target regardless of the target's health, so we have that same dynamic. Come up here to Beast Mastery, and again, in for the kill command has a chance to reset the cooldown of kill shot and cause your next kill shot to be usable on any target regardless of the target's health. And it's a 2-point talent. It's the same dynamic in every tree. I don't know why it's not in the Hunter tree, if that's the case. Maybe put it over here. Maybe Post Haste is not a 2-pointer. Maybe it's a 1-pointer, and we get another nodule to unlock that ability for our kill shot, based on our abilities, or our spec. So that was a very quick overview of all of this. I had gone over all of these trees the first time when I kind of gave my first impressions. That is not in this video, obviously. They were all half an hour each. This is sort of similar. Didn't quite touch on everything, but I kind of wanted to get the main points out there, especially in terms of the design philosophy. So whether we have increased control over the character's build. In some cases I think we do, but they're a little bit scattered. So for Beast Mastery, it's kind of just 2 builds and it's not very clearly outlined. They're kind of all over the place a little bit. Provide class and spec identity. I think Survival suffers from that the most, since it's kind of lost in terms of what it is, but it's tied to kill command. If we are able to flesh out our Wildfire build and our Mongoose Power build again, that might help to bring in all the missing pieces that are currently missing. Or to even, I mean, I would really like to see the return of the ability to make any of these specs range for melee, but that is way outside scope, so. And speaking of stuff outside scope, one of the things I would have also liked to have seen, a wild deviation, to see a neat dynamic in this tree that would enable some variation in terms of secondary stat builds. So say we have a point here on the Hunter tree where we can increase crit, haste, or mastery, and then in the spec tree we have builds that react based on those kind of synergies. So for example, Dance of Death with crit, or Aspect of the Wild for mastery, or aim shot reduction, focus juicing the main ability spam with haste. Or specking haste would have that feel of having like the Battle for Azeroth overwhelming power trait, and reducing aim shot enough to feel instant or recharge fast. Obviously that is, again, outside scope, so I'll just leave that on the table as a thought in the air. Yeah, I think that's more or less all I had to say. In terms of communicating dependencies and magnitude intuitively, that is the main thing I would say is missing for all 3 specs. I don't think it's communicating the dependencies and the magnitude intuitively or clearly. I think it's a little bit up to the player, which is okay. It might not necessarily be a bad thing to be unclear, especially if you want to lean more towards maybe making those bad builds for hunters, which is possible, but... And obviously spec trees focusing on bonuses for the main role. All of this was this is all damage related. Survival felt all damage related. Marksmanship more or less felt all damage related, except for maybe this weird thing with bursting shot. In terms of creating a damage niche, so right now in Shadowlands we've got Beast Mastery as kind of our single target, very big pain point in terms of AoE and contention with some of the balancing stuff with the tier sets, but Marksmanship obviously very heavily AoE. I'd actually say we are missing a little bit of this dynamic with the 4-piece, where spending 40 focus grants you 1 charge of trick shots. That would have been nice to see as well. maybe here off salvo as a 1-pointer. In terms of single target build, I don't think kill shot is the way to go for marksmanship. But if it is done that way, maybe we need a few more talents for... I don't know. I don't think this will really work, but we'll see. And then survival we already went over, so yeah. Yep. Main role, DPS. Main tree should be used for choosing stuff that draws the identity of other specs for hybridness or flavor. Kind of works with beast mastery and survival. Doesn't really work for marksmanship survival. This portion, obviously not really hybridness, it's just kill command and kill shot, which is something all 3 specs always had anyway in Shadowlands, along with some of the utility choices, counter shot, misdirection, trank shot, camo, intim, scatter, binding. Those were kind of universally available. I guess they're okay here. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of being able to pick your utility in this section, and that dictates your branches to the bottom. But it's not as high impact just due to the nature of it being split between pet stuff and weapon stuff. This right here is a little bit weird to me. You're basically saying in order to get this crit talent, the only option is to get this Binding Shackles talent, which is kind of weird, but it is what it is, especially if you don't have a pet. So say you're a marksmanship, you basically be forced into high explosive trap is okay, I guess, and then you're spending 3 points to get a knockback that you're probably not going to use because you already have a knockback that is here. But I guess you'd have 2 knockbacks maybe, I don't know. Yeah, that's a hybrid option, air quotes. But it being locked behind this is a little bit weird to me. Camouflage again, I think that's a very big item for survival, and when you're building survival, you're likely going to go across all of this stuff quite a bit in terms of just unlocking things, not necessarily wanting pet healy stuff, so you would probably go as a raider, maybe like Binding Shot would be useful, and then to make your way all the way back, you basically have to just spend the points in here anyway to unlock this section. So there isn't really an option for survival to come down here on this side. Basically a dead section. Although I guess not necessarily entirely dead, since we can come over here and get latent poison. I assume that was the intention of putting the movement ability thing here. But yeah, just a little bit weird with this utility section, especially with a very big hole of defenses. The question there in regards to marksmanship defenses. Survival of the fittest, I'm not sure if that is... I assume that's going to be baseline, just with command pet. But something to keep in mind as well. And we'll leave it at that, since this is almost an hour and 20 minutes now.